All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a story that, well, it's not in your standard physics textbook. It's a kind of secret history of the unified field, and it all revolves around this one really powerful idea, resonance. So yeah, let's do exactly that. Let's imagine we're tuning an old radio dial, sifting through 130 years of what some people have called resonance-minded heresy. And, this isn't just about dry, established laws. No, this is a story with hidden chapters, with ideas that just won't die.
And that's really the big question we're tackling, isn't it? Could there be another story running in parallel to the one we all know? Einstein, quantum mechanics, all that? A different narrative, one that's been cooking in the shadows for more than 100 years, pointing to one single field that ties it all together.
Now, to start pulling on this thread, you might think we'd go way back in time. But actually, we're going to start right here, in the present day. Because there's this sudden burst of, let's call them interesting claims, bubbling up on the edges of physics. And they all seem to point back to this much older and, frankly, much weirder idea.
I mean, check this out. Right now, you've got these different things all happening at once. You have physicists putting out papers describing particles not as little balls, but as tiny, closed loops of light, just different vibrating notes. Then you've got NASA's EagleWorks lab trying to get thrust by, and this is their term, stirring vacuum modes. And on top of all that, a whole stack of patents for exotic propulsion tech are being quietly put into lock and key. All of these modern breadcrumbs lead us back to one big question. Who thought of this first?
And to find that origin point, we've got to crank that dial way back to the turn of the 20th century, to a mind that was as brilliant as it was mysterious, Nikola Tesla. This is where the whole story really begins. So, picture this. It's 1891, and Tesla has this absolutely wild idea. What if the entire planet, the Earth itself, is just one giant resonator? He figured if you could just hit it with the right frequency, you could make the whole thing ring like a bell. And that would mean wireless power for everyone, everywhere. But this is where the story takes a turn. After he died, the government swooped in and seized his papers, his notes, and a lot of this work, it just disappeared.
The magic word here is eigenfrequency. It sounds complex, but it's actually pretty simple. Think about it. A guitar string has a note it wants to play. A wine glass has the pitch that can shatter it. Everything has a natural, built-in frequency it likes to vibrate at. That's its eigenfrequency. Tesla's genius was thinking, okay, what if the whole planet has one? He believed that if you could find it and tap into it, you'd unlock an unbelievable amount of energy.
Which, of course, brings up the obvious question, right? If this idea was so powerful, so revolutionary, why isn't it common knowledge? Why aren't our lights powered by it right now? Well, to answer that, we have to look at what happened next, as the world plunged into the Cold War.
Okay, so a couple of big things happened that basically buried these ideas. First, you have the Invention Secrecy Act. This gave the government the power to just classify any patent that might affect national security. Think about that. Anything related to new energy sources, poof, gone. At the same time, over in the Soviet Union, a physicist named Andrei Sakharov published a groundbreaking paper suggesting gravity itself was just a kind of resonance. But because it was in Russian and because of the Cold War, it barely made a ripple in the West.
And get this, we're not talking about just a few patents here and there. We're talking about thousands of them getting classified every year. It's like they were creating this official hidden library of technology that could maybe change the world.
So, for decades, things went pretty quiet. But then, the idea of resonance came back. And it came back in a big way by challenging one of the most fundamental things we think we know about physics. What even is mass?
Okay, so this is a huge change in thinking. The textbook view is that a particle just has mass. It's a property, like its charge. But then these other physicists came along, guys like Hal Puthoff, and they proposed something totally different. They said, what if mass isn't a property of the particle at all? What if it's an effect? An effect of that particle moving through an underlying energy field that's everywhere. The perfect analogy is moving your hand through water. The resistance you feel, the drag, that's what they're saying mass is.
And this is where it all clicks together. You take Tesla's resonance, you take this idea of an underlying vacuum field, and you add in this new concept of mass as drag, and suddenly you have a story. It's speculative, for sure,
but it's a coherent story about a single field that could explain, well, everything.
So let's break down this storyline. Step 1. Imagine there's just one fundamental field, like a sort of invisible ocean that fills all the space. Step 2. All the forces we know, gravity, electromagnetism, you name it, they aren't separate things. They're just different vibrations in that one field. Step 3. That feeling of inertia, of mass, that's just the drag you feel when you try to accelerate through that field. Which leads to the mind-blowing finale. Step 4. If you could build something to tune into that field's natural frequency, you could pull energy right out of it. It's basically Tesla's original dream, but with a whole new scientific foundation.
Okay, so that brings us right back to today. We've got this incredible alternative story, this secret history. But what's the bottom line? Where do things stand right now? Are we actually close to finding out if any of this is real? Well, what we've got now is basically two different paths in physics. On one side, you have mainstream science. And look, the standard model, general relativity, they work. They make predictions with brutal, unbelievable accuracy, and we can test them. But then you have this other path, being explored in these edge labs, often under classified contracts and NDAs. They're the ones hunting for these resonant shortcuts. And because of that secrecy, whatever they find, we don't get to see it.
But this story is far from over. In fact, there are specific things we can watch for. Right now, our most sensitive experiments are getting so good, they can almost hear the background hum of the vacuum. The next big clue could be if we see a physical constant, something we thought was fixed, start to drift. That would be a huge smoking gun. And some physicists are predicting that by around 2028, a new generation of experiments will finally be sensitive enough to see these resonance effects directly, if they're really there.
And so, that leaves us with one last really big question. Let's just say this secret history turns out to be true, and someone builds a device that can tap into this limitless energy from the vacuum. What then? What do? Do we make it open source for all of humanity, or do we lock it down, afraid of how it could be misused? Suddenly, it's not a physics question anymore, is it? It's a question about who we are.